We need to get right into this because I'm so excited today. Hi, I'm Citris, now you know. Welcome to my channel. I do art and other stuff I guess, but for today, art. And right now, I am so pumped up because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things, magical girls! Recently, I revamped one of my OCs who had a super flimsy story about becoming accidentally magic into the story of the first magical boy in a world filled with magical girls. And I wanted to tell everyone about him. But as my first official magical person OC, I also want to use this as an opportunity to draw him in some of my favorite magical girl styles. So I made a template to do the magical girl style challenge. Here it is. And I'll be drawing my character Jupiter in most of these styles. A few of them change. So let's begin. 3, 2, 1. I started off this challenge by confusing myself and not being able to draw. This is not my usual style, but I recently did a few commissions in this super chibi-like style, and my brain and wrists memories seemed to be stuck in that auto chibi mode, so excuse that it's not the standard style, but it is a style I do draw in occasionally. Anyways, I'll be drawing Jupiter today in his transformed version. Out of his fighting getup, he's normally has the same green hair, but it's a short green mullet, and he's in his school's military uniform because, yeah, I forgot to mention, the story doesn't just take place in a world filled with magical girls for no reason. It's a world where the government is capitalizing off of the said magical girls, and they all attend a military boarding school to be trained for different things. You know, how the real government would treat magical girls. Anyways, they go to this school called the Synthetic Star Corps Academy, or the SSCA for short, and it's a school usually for young girls to train and become magical girls under the employment of the Synthetic Star Corps, which is the military part of that school. But we'll talk more about this later. For now, let's talk about each different art style. If you know magical girls, you know Madoka Magica, and I'm sure you know that it's a brilliant show. It really illustrates what a lot of the early magical girl animes couldn't, which is that these teens and kids are actually in life and death situations trying to save people and the planet or whatever they're doing. It isn't just fun and games, which is something I took heavy interest into pulling into my own story. Drawing in this style was actually a lot harder than I thought it would be. Honestly, I don't think you really notice how odd the animation style of Madoka is until you're really looking at it trying to recreate it. I mean, the witches alone were this cool collage effect, but the actual characters are very strangely proportioned. And while I do love the show, doing this project made me kind of think, was Madoka ugly? Was that the point? Were the girls less shiny, sparkly, pretty magical girls to really get the danger points across? I can't ever really be sure, but I do know this. Madoka and Hamaru are lesbians, and no one will ever be able to change my mind. Sailor Moon is, of course, my entire childhood. I have a huge Sailor Moon collection, and honestly, Sailor Moon had some of the coolest villains of any magical girl some of the dumbest, too. One of them was a shoe, guys. But as well as having that, they had really convoluted timelines. I mean, there were girls going back and forth from the future to the past to the double future. People were alive from the past, but they were new and reincarnate. It was very confusing. They jump around time and space like they're catching the next train home. Anyways, during this drawing, I went for like a halfway between the 90s anime style that I loved and the manga style that's really, really cute. And personally, I think I should have probably picked one or the other because it turns out nice, but something's a tad off for me with this one. I used Sailor Pluto to color pick the hair colors because the Sailor Moon show often does this weird thing where they give a color to the hair but use the black as a heavy base for it to I don't understand why they did it. It is neat and I do like it, so I used Pluto for the hair base. And I went for the incorrect pink tone color adjusting. I know it's not the right one, but I like it. It's my childhood. Kill la Kill is a magical girl show, I swear. They transform in everything. Also, if you Google it, Google agrees with me, you can literally search magical girl shows and Kill la Kill pops up. Now listen, at this point, I haven't finished watching it, but I've only seen a handful of the episodes, but I knew I needed to include it in this challenge because how could I not? Although the Studio Trigger style of animation is so flowy and off-model, they do it for the dynamic animation, and that's awesome, but I did struggle to find a reference for how I should even draw Jupiter in this style. However, I'm really happy with how he turned out, and these are probably my favorite eyes of the entire batch. Something about the Kill la Kill eye shape is so simple and attractive. Maybe it's because it had a pupil, and I never draw pupils. Maybe I should start drawing pupils. Kiki's delivery service. Okay, well, this movie is technically the story of a girl born with magic who slowly loses her magic and then tries to regain it. I feel like Kiki could definitely count as a magical girl. Maybe this is a stretch because she doesn't have a transformation sequence like typical magical girls, but amongst this lineup, I believe she fits. Anyways, this was actually one of the most simple styles I chose. I didn't realize that the line art and shading on the characters in the film are really simple to kind of make way for the huge, expansive, and detailed backgrounds that really bring the film to life. So finding a shot to reference was pretty simple, and I do enjoy how it turned out. I could imagine Kiki and Jupiter laughing at that stuck-up one witch as she flies off with her perfect flying and perfect cat, while they wiggle about and get a hang of things, lesser magical girl style. Pretty Cure is a lot. Not just to watch, but actually, realistically, there are millions of seasons of this show. They all tend to follow a really similar pattern of girls becoming new cures and forming a team and fighting some baddies and saving people and the planet, and then a new season comes out and it's a new set of girls with new powers and new names. Does that mean I dislike it? No, not at all. I absolutely love it. Pretty Cure has a lot of different style changes as the seasons continue, so this one I'm going off of specifically was based on the style used in Go Princess Precure, which is actually a season I haven't seen yet. But after doing this art piece, I definitely will be watching it because the team's designs in this season are so appealing to me. And this ended up being one of my favorite of the drawings that I did. Actually, speaking of Pretty Cure, I believe in the US a few seasons were ported over and translated and released under a glitter force, which we're not gonna talk about. Stop, wait, pause, hold on. Okay, listen, I was drawing and I got to this point and I realized I left out a huge market. I was only drawing magical girls from anime. And what about the Western media magical girls? So I decided to change things up a little bit, and I hope you guys don't mind. So with a magical transformation of its own, here's the new prompts. Listen, if you're upset with the ones I switched, I'm so sorry. And if enough of you want, maybe I'll do this again with the other shows and some more. Let me know in the comments below if you do want more magical girl content, because I will always be down for magical girls. Anyways, back at it, let's start with Steven Universe. And I will hear no Steven Universe non-magical girl slander. He's a magical girl, so are the gems. There's Sailor Moon items in the background. Rebecca Sugar put in the references. She knows what she was doing. Steven Universe is a magical girl. Also, this style is one I'm really familiar with because I used to draw a ton of gem sonas back in the day. In fact, I have a team of gem sonas still floating around in my mind with an entire story I'd love to tell in a video form one day. Anyways, this one didn't take much thought besides what gem Jupiter would be, and I figured it would make most sense if he was a green quartz to roll around with the roses and amethysts in space. My Little Pony Friendship is Magic was my jam growing up. There was a period of time where I lacked the friendship that I really wanted and was surrounded by a lot of bullies and fake friends, and MLP was an escape from that. I was a bit too old to be watching it, but honestly, y'all are all watching Bluey these days, so I'm fine with having watched MLP as a young teen. This style was a lot of fun to do. I don't draw animals often, and recently I've gotten the opportunity a couple times to be able to draw them, and I've been having a ton of fun doing it. I feel like Jupiter's pony came out super cute, and I could see him one day maybe being the first male alicorn. Move over, Princess Celestia, the boys are back, baby. So stupid. And finally, we have Winx Club. And before we even talk about the art or the animated show, I want to say, I enjoyed the Netflix live-action version. I'm sad it got canceled. I know everyone hated it, but it was just the right amount of kitsch. It was perfect. And the transformation sequence at the end of season 1, it should have been me. Why wasn't it me? I should have been cast as Bloom. Anyways, I really did love the show growing up, and it didn't port wonderfully to America as far as I can remember. Back then, I remember being confused to the plotline, and the animation style kept changing, and the story did too. I recently went back and rewatched what I believe is the original show, and honestly, it's a tough show, but the nostalgia was strong, and so I enjoyed it nonetheless. The style was actually really fun to draw in. I usually don't draw something this angular, and I really love how it turned out. Anyways, here's my magical girl style challenge with my boy Jupiter. Now, after I finished this challenge, I wanted to take all of the bits and pieces I enjoyed from each style and merge them about and create a franken magical girl style to draw in. I was still really inspired and I didn't want to stop. So I decided to create the fake cover of a manga for Jupiter. And while this time-lapse plays, I want to tell you the story of how Jupiter's school came to be and how he became enrolled. 300 years ago, Saturn's moon Titan broke free from its gravitational pull, and it slipped into a direct collision path with the Earth. In order to save the planet, world leaders decided to launch the entire planet's missile collection into space, to hopefully destroy the huge moon. They were successful in breaking it into chunks, but the world as we know it was lost in the destruction, as the fragmented moon rained down on the Earth. Some communities, however, survived the planetary damage and spent years working together to rebuild. However, the world they were rebuilding in had been changed. Titan was made up of millions of crystals never seen before on Earth, and they had a magical effect on everything they touched. Where large pieces crashed into the Earth, the land and plant life that regrew changed from our own. Plants became larger and more colorful, carnivorous and vicious. They were sentient enough to think hunger and food, and would attack anything that got close enough. A simple daisy was now a living thing that could kill you in a heartbeat. Water became more dense. It held you under if you slipped into its waves, changing currents quickly to keep anything from escaping. And the animals, the poor animals, those that found shards of crystals after the initial crash and were curious enough to touch them, their bodies mutated horribly into terrible creatures of pain who would attack anything in sight, even each other. This phenomenon became known as starfall, and the areas of Earth changed, became the star-touched, and the animals and humans turned into monsters, became star beasts. But not everyone changed. In the times of rebuilding, an entire community of people was working on huge walls surrounding their city to keep the star things out. And 5 teenage girls who were assisting in the rebuild were in the rock quarry breaking apart stones to be used in the wall when they accidentally cracked open a huge geode, all 5 of them being exposed to the star crystals, but for some reason, they didn't change in the expected ways. The girls instead gained strength of a star beast and new abilities to control the world around them, and they gained the ability to transform into new forms, and they became the first magical girls of this world. Using their powers, they defended their community from other star creatures, and emboldened by their transformations, other people went out too seeking star drops to find, thinking perhaps the chemicals had changed and this was the new outcome. But they were wrong. Those that touched the star drops became monsters just as before, and the 5 girls were a team for years, defending the city until the wall was complete. And then one day, one of them was killed in battle, and the other 4 became afraid. They didn't want to risk their lives anymore. The wall was done. They were older now, and they wanted more than just battling. They wanted families and lives. And so the girls, who called themselves the Starcatchers, retired. The community wasn't satisfied with that, however. While they didn't know the civilian identities of the 4 girls who retired, the girl who died's identity became public knowledge when she detransformed following her death. The government of this society exhumed her body and began experimenting with her DNA, and after years of research, they accomplished what they intended. They found that the star drops were only compatible with young girls in this way, and that if trained, they could manufacture these magical girl soldiers themselves. However, there was a problem. It had taken so many years of research that the crystals of Titan that fell to Earth 100 years ago had all lost their potency by now. The so-called magic had leached into the Earth where they fell, and people weren't transforming anymore when they touched them. So back to the drawing boards the government and scientists went, with a new mission. They knew now why the girls had successfully merged with the star drops, but not how. And after more years, they figured out the how, and they managed to successfully distill the fallen Starcatcher's DNA into a serum to transform new girls. And so an academy was opened, the SSCA, Synthetic Star Corps Academy. Girls could join or were conscripted at the age of 12, and they spent 4 years learning battle tactics, combat training, and the rules on how to be a magical girl. And after 4 years, they had an exam, and if they passed, the girls were given the S3 drug, otherwise known as the Synthetic Star Serum, and they would gain their transformation and magical abilities. After this, they would train for another 2 years with their new abilities before they were officially employed into the workforce of the SSC. However, there was a catch to all of this. The S3 drug wasn't perfect, and after about 10 years in the girl's system, they would begin to show signs of mutation and rapidly turn into a monster. These were known as synthetic star beasts, or sin beasts for short. So for a while, they just let the girls transform and then be killed, until they were able to develop a new drug, an S3 antivenom, that would remove the effects of the synthetic star serum from the girls' bodies and they could return to civilian life. And with this new development, the SSCA became a prestigious academy to join and began to be dominated by nepotism and wealth. That is, until Jupiter arrived. You see, Jupiter's story begins like this. He was visiting his mother's grave late at night. It was the 10th anniversary since she died, and Jupiter was now 16. He had visited earlier in the day with his grandparents, but he had snuck out to sit against her grave and talk to his mother alone. He told her about his life and how he was working at the coffee shop now, and the smell of coffee reminded him of her, and that perhaps he would like to own a coffee shop of his own one day and name it after her. While he sat and talked to his mother's grave, he watched the night sky, and after a while he saw something sparkle above him. He watched it intently as it grew larger, until he realized it was falling. Watching it crash further into the graveyard, Jupiter decided to investigate. And when he found the small crater the object had made, he saw a fist-sized crystal. Without thinking much, he reached down and picked it up. And just as he did, a whirl of energy swelled through his body and a burst of light erupted from him, and his eyes rolled back in his head and he blacked out. When he came to, SSC members were surrounding him, and the last thing he heard before blacking out again was someone speaking into a walkie. "Yeah, we found the star. No, some kid got it first. Yep, outfit and all. We've got a problem though, mistress. The kid who transformed, he's a he." And after that, Jupiter was carted off to the SSCA, where they tried to unravel the mystery of why he didn't become a star beast and instead became the first magical boy. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love nothing more than magical girls and my OCs, and I've been looking for a reason to create a magical girl character in the world they exist in. Who would have guessed that my first magical girl OC would be a magical boy? Anyways, I do need to design a team and a villain for Jupiter's story, so let me know if you'd be interested in another video where I design those characters as well. And then maybe after that we'll do this again with every character and I'll do a full little team illustration in different styles. But in the meantime, watch another one of my videos. Leave me a comment, like, or subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I've been Citris. Bye-bye.